It has been a wonderful two-day forum where we had the opportunity to tackle several critical industry topics. We had great list of panelists and presenters and tremendous audience. And we are concluding with one of the most contemporary and interesting, and I would say critical trends in the industry today, the issue of operational excellence, sustainability, and ESG as a corporate structure. As we were saying before we came online, shipping companies apply operational excellence as a matter of fact, but sustainability, ESG, and the adoption of those as a corporate culture is a step above, a step beyond. So I will turn it over to Nick Brown from Bureau Veritas. I'm very thankful to him for moderating the panel, and of course I'm delighted to have with us Ted Young, Jesper Jensen, Christos Begleris, Øistein Jensen, and Paulo Almeida. So without any more delay from me, thank you, and Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Great to see you again, and it's a pleasure to be with you here today and to close off this Operational Excellence Forum. Well, good morning to the Americas, good day to all of you out there, and good evening if we're not too late for those of you who are where the sun has already set. This, as we know, is the closing panel of the Capital Link Operational Excellence event. I'm Nick Brown, and I will try and help moderate this panel where we're talking sustainability, operational excellence, and ESG, that is environmental, social, and governance policies as corporate strategy. So we're asking, are operational excellence and ESG two different, distinct concepts? And how are market forces, regulatory requirements, charterer, investor, and financier expectations propelling shipping companies to go beyond minimum compliance requirements, adopting ESG and operational excellence as a single corporate strategy? Is that so? Well, we're going to find out in the next 45 minutes, I hope. And I think that we're going to hear quite a lot about the E in ESG today, but I hope also we have time for the S and the G, particularly covering some diversity and inclusion ground. So, as usual, from Capital Link, we have a great panel to take us through the subject. Unfortunately, however, Haris Plakantonakis from Starbulk has had to pull out of today's program, but luckily, her colleague Christos Begleris, CFO at the listed dry bulk operator, has stepped into the breach to share his company's views on ESG. So thanks for joining, Christos, at the last minute. Joining Christos is Ted Young, another CFO from Dorian LPG, another listed company, specialized, as the name suggests, in LPG carriers. Øistein Jensen is Chief Sustainability Officer at Odfjell, the Bergen headquartered chemical carrier specialists. And Jesper S. Jensen is head of the technical division at TORM, based in Copenhagen, where their head office is, who operate product tankers. While Paulo Almeida, joining us from London, is the Chief Investment Officer at Tufton Investment Management. So welcome to the panel, everybody. Many thanks for joining us here today to provide the vital picture on making operational excellence sustainable. So there are three themes that we thought we'd share and try and address today: the acceleration of change, digitalization, decarbonization, and market responses through the pandemic, and both a deepening urgency and sense of opportunity. They're changing our world. So we'll look at that. How do we encourage diversity? And seafarers, the biggest S perhaps in ESG, where do they fit into ESG and the health and well-being of seafarers for operational excellence, as well as careers for them? So Paulo, can I start with you? How do you see ESG today? What does it mean for your company, and what implications are there for your and your stakeholders' operational performance?
So, Tufton, we are not a shipping company exactly. We do own quite a lot of vessels. We own over 90 ships, but we are an investment manager with a diversified fleet. We tend to time charter our vessels out for 2 or 3 years. We have some longer, we have some bareboats, we have ships operating in pools as well. So we have quite a mixed portfolio and a mix of commercial strategies. Now, although we're not a shipping company, we have a lot of the same concerns as shipping companies, and one of our funds is actually listed. So the public markets and public disclosure aspects are at least as important to us as my peers and colleagues here on the panel. ESG, I think, has become a very big topic in shipping over the past couple of years. I think it's probably fair to say. For some, a bit longer than that. Clearly, there's been a focus historically on prevention of oil spills, crew health and safety as well. But clearly, the biggest issue by far today is decarbonization. Now, because we're a financial investor, we're a regulated entity in the UK, and most of the capital that we manage comes from pension funds. ESG has perhaps been even more important to us and for longer than for the industry overall. Now, there's a very basic and interesting, although not often not well understood, reason for that. In that pension funds, again, who are most of our investors are pension funds. Pension funds have been much more focused on ESG and especially decarbonization and climate change for much longer than maybe the past couple of years that shipping has increasingly looked at it. The reason for that is that pension funds have very diverse and large portfolios of investments, and perhaps were earlier to recognize that the externalities produced by some of their investments, including pollution, which is a key one, can impact other parts of their portfolio. So if you're a very large pension fund, in theory, you can own a very small percentage of every asset in the world. Of course, that in practice is very difficult to do, but you'll have a very diverse portfolio. So you may have 1% of your portfolio in shipping, 2-3% in oil and gas, 10-15% in real estate, 5% in forests and agricultural land. So you have a very diverse portfolio. But because you have this diverse portfolio, and you may also have stakes in insurance companies, et cetera, perhaps pension funds were the earliest to see that the pollution or other externalities that were produced by some of their investments, energy, shipping, aviation, were contributing to climate change. We can't say that we're not contributing to climate change. Clearly, we're trying to minimize that as much as possible. But in contributing to climate change, we as an industry and other industries that also produce significant amounts of CO2 were potentially impacting in a negative way, in a potentially very negative way, other investments that they had. So climate change obviously could have a very significant negative impact on the farmland that a pension fund owns. It could have an impact on some of the commercial real estate they own in coastal areas, because with rising sea levels, impair some of those values, the values of some of those properties. So ESG has been, and especially decarbonization, has been much more important for pension funds. The main way that we have integrated ESG into our processes, we are a member or a signatory to a convention called the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investing, which require, and we'd probably do most of it anyway, even if we weren't a part of it, but it requires that when we analyze investments and how we run our investments, we look to make as little of a negative environmental impact as possible. So how we've been doing that over the years, we buy for any vintage of ship to invest in, we try to invest in the top quartile of fuel efficiency. We appoint technical managers, and we work with charterers who have very good track records. And through our technical managers as well, are very focused on crew health and safety. So that is sort of our ESG framework. And what we try to do is to make an impact in those areas where our impact can be greatest, and decarbonization today is almost certainly that area.
That's great, Paulo. Thanks for starting us off. And I think that point about, the pension funds linking their investments and the impact of their investments is quite interesting, and maybe reflects back on the increased necessity in shipping to be able to engage with external stakeholders, which maybe the industry hasn't been so great at to date. So thank you. Øistein, I know one of the themes that we raised in our our pre-meet was that you observed the increasing acceleration of change through the pandemic, and now that ESG is just becoming ever more important and reflecting that sense of urgency. Can you tell us about what you're doing at Odfjell?
See there, yes, and thank you for having me on the panel there. As you mentioned, we here in Odfjell, we are a integrated shipping company, so we do management and own our vessels and operate pools, and others charge us as well. So we operate about 100 large tankers at the moment. So sustainability for us is about being long-term, right? So when we're talking about sustainability and ESG, there's always a blend of these, but for us, we're talking about sustainability. ESG is the way we report on sustainability. So for us, it's about the decisions that we are taking today that will have an effect tomorrow. So it's about being long-term. And when you're going to be long-term, you need to integrate everything that is important for the company going forward. And that means that the growing, and as you mentioned, the sort of, I wouldn't say growing, I would say exponential attention to sustainability now. We need to integrate that into our business. So we have been talking about decarbonization. So decarbonization is nothing that you do as a sustainability initiative. It's something you do as a business initiative. So when we are talking about the decisions that we are taking today, the strategy that we are doing today, we need to integrate everything that is important for us, both from the downside perspective, as the needs that we're mitigating the risk. So we're talking about climate risk. We need to take actions in order to mitigate climate risk, but we also need to take actions in order to capture the value and opportunities that this major transition that we're going through will offer. So, so I think that when we are talking initially, as you mentioned, whether sustainability and operational excellence was something different, two different pillars or two different things, or separated. I would argue that it's not, and I would argue that it's strongly integrated. I would go as far as saying that we would probably stop having a sustainability strategy going forward, because we need to have a sustainable business strategy. So I think that the sort of the theme of sustainability would probably, I wouldn't say it vanished, but it would probably be more and more integrated into the other parts of the strategy, because you can't allow yourself today not thinking about what's going to future fuel going to be, how do I avoid stranded assets, how do we manage environmental and social and governance matters. That is an important part of business decisions taking that we have to take today, and it's an important part of discussions that we're doing in our boardrooms and in our management.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you. A need for a sustainable strategy. Thank you. Christos, can I turn to you?
Sure. Thank you, Nick. I would agree with Øistein in that energy efficiency and ESG was a sort of nice to have as part of operational excellence a few years ago. But increasingly in the last few years, ESG and operational excellence are merging, and ESG is a mandatory pillar of operational excellence. At Starbuck, we have focused early on sustainability and on our sustainability strategy in order to have a sustainable business. And we're now in our third year of producing a sustainability report, which everybody's welcome to basically see on our website, where we give details on our involvement across all three pillars: environment, social, and corporate governance. On the environment side, decarbonization is basically the main focus of the agenda, whether through participating in various forums and having various projects that we work with in order to evaluate alternative fuels and combustion improvements, whether through carbon disclosure, members of the Getting to Zero Coalition through the Global Maritime Forum, and monitoring on a daily basis our emissions, whether carbon, nitric oxide, sulfur oxide, etc. On the governance side, we have 4,500 seafarers pool and 320 people on shore, our offices globally. Health and safety on board our vessels is a major focus for us. We're increasing spending on crew training, and we monitor various indices like LTIF, serious accidents, etc. We are very focused on providing equal opportunities. We have 40% of our workforce onshore being women, 20% of our top management are actually women, and we have 2 ladies in the board of our directors. And then on the social front, we are signatories in the Neptune Declaration, which supports seafarers' well-being. We are signatories in various other conventions, such as the UN Global Compact Principles, which also mentioned by Paulo, is basically the focus is for firms and businesses to adopt sustainable and socially responsible policies and to see how they report on their implementation. And we support our communities. We support the communities that we work in and we operate in, whether through medical aid now in times of the global pandemic, or whether through funding scholarships in order to basically promote talented youth. So ESG, all 3 pillars, E, S, and G, are in the very core and on the very top of our agenda in the last few years.
Okay, thank you, Christos. You mentioned monitoring. We might come back to that just in terms of KPIs. Thank you. Jesper, can I go to you? How do you see things at TORM?
Yeah, hi, Nick. Thank you very much. Yeah, in TORM, just a little background in TORM, we operate around 80 product tankers. We have on a fully integrated platform, we have around 3,500 seafarers. And so we own the ships ourselves, we operate them technically and commercially ourselves. We do not really participate in pools or chartering in out. So we have a very efficient platform in the sense of optimizing our operation and our environmental impact. We are listed in the US and in Copenhagen, and we are UK PLC, just as a background. So we have worked with operational excellence for many years, I think, as other ship owners. We do not really, we only over the last years, we have seen the ESG, we have incorporated that in our reporting. So on the internal side, we have optimized our operations in a way that we, for the last 6 years, we have nominal, apple to apple, reduced our fuel consumption with more than 12%, due to our increasing excellence and retrofitting our ships, making sure they have a very good hull coating and so on. So all these, you can say, practical tools you have, everybody actually have in their hand. We have actually achieved quite a lot on that for the last year. So now we see that the ESG is becoming an important part for the external world for us. We have seen that the bank investors and the customers are looking at us as an industry and as a company. How are we doing there? And so we have just last year we launched our ESG report, where we are in a very transparent and clear way communicate our goals, and everybody can look at that. We have linked up with some of our financing partners also to that our loan agreements is actually linked to our environmental performance. So that's also something which we are looking to expand further in the years to come. Decarbonization as such, we actually, it's within the last year, it's actually become the topic of the day in the management team on board in our company, because we are talking, whether you're talking asset strategy, operational setup, new merger acquisition, whatever you do, you have decarbonization as the guiding tool in the horizon. You need to fit your strategy into that. So actually we are working very much on that part in our day-to-day. I do believe, in all fairness, in a company like us, we are well positioned to be reaching the 2030 goals well ahead of 2030. And we're doing that by continuing developing our digitalization as an evolution. We are capturing a lot of stuff and from the ships and our commercial operation every day. And the trick is really to have the right setup, the right team, and the right people to make use of all these data, because you can also get lost in data, and I think that everybody is also aware of that. So that's another part how we see, and we see also there's still a lot more to be done in reducing the carbon footprint from the existing fleet before we are actually talking about the carbon neutral ships. Because it will be mass produced at close to 2030. On the crewing side, we are really harvesting our benefits from the integrated platform and how we make use of how we optimize our operations in the daily and long term is actually very much due to the commitment and support from our seafarers. We are doing on the ESG part of that also. Let me touch upon that. We are actually supporting not only our seafarers but also the families beyond what I think most others are doing. We are having scholarship programs. We are having insurances. We are having medical care and actually extending that also during this pandemic. And now we are incorporating the crewing families into our vaccination programs and so on. So we are really seeing that by taking care of the well-being of our seafarers, we also get a lot back the other way of stability during an uncertain situation like these COVID times. So yeah, that's a short brief from TORM.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jesper. There's a few things we'll come back to there later. What was the fuel saving you said you'd captured already, the percentage so far?
More than 12%. Apple to apple on existing ships, so that's pure by optimization, and we see today we are. I'm not bragging, but we are doing quite well when we compare with our peers and where we are on the milestone towards 2030.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jesper. Well, Ted, I mean, I assume a lot of that is familiar to you. You got either the easy job or the tough job of trying to compete with what everyone else has said. What's your perspective?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. It's a very tough act to follow. Batting cleanup, as we say in American baseball here. So I think everyone really summarized it quite well. I think just to pick up on a few themes that really resonated with me. Øistein's exactly right, and everybody sort of said the same thing in different ways. ESG has always been a thing in shipping, but it is now parts that have always been core to our operation, but I think there's an increased recognition that it deserves more centrality. So as we've gone about preparing our first annual report, a lot of it's been, we've been doing this for a while. We support orphanages in Greece. We support kids foundations in the United Kingdom. We support childcare here in the US. We support some of our seafarers communities in the Philippines. And I think for knowing most of the firms by reputation, I think people have been doing this for generations, and shipping probably doesn't do a very good job of tooting its own horn in that regard. And I think, environmentally, again, I look at this group and people have always been acutely aware of it. All these firms are technically sophisticated. Paulo's group as well. They're not just number crunchers. They know the issues that go into technical improvement and vessel efficiency. So, that's been an ongoing theme in the industry. I mean, we look at, just our little world of very large gas carriers, and, we've seen 10, 15% in fuel improvements just generation over generation. But, there's an increased focus and increased urgency to lowering those numbers further, to changing fuel sources, to either carbon free, or in our case, we strongly believe that LPG is a bridge fuel that helps get us all there. And I think as Jesper pointed out and others, it plays a role in financing. And look, I'm CFO, so that's near and dear to my heart. We concluded a a new deal last year with our main lending banks, and we derive interest savings related to our outperformance based on AER trajectory values. You know, and that's fantastic because you know, initially I will confess to being a bit skeptical because all the banks came out talking about Poseidon principles. So that's wonderful. We're all on board. What are you gonna, you know, are you just gonna tell us you're not gonna lend to us? Or you actually put your money where your mouth is? And I was proven wrong in my skepticism. They did it. So it permeates all aspects of our business. It's not going to change. It will continue to be an important force in attracting capital and growing our business. And we all capture data now, and we will continue to be measured on it. And it's going to be a key differentiator for all of us as we go forward.
Thanks, Ted. And just on, I mean, two things there. Shipping needs to be better at tooting its own horn. I mean, does all the panel agree in that respect that maybe, you know, for as long as I've been in shipping, the question of the image of the industry has been an issue, but, you know, in many ways has much changed, and that shipping does need to do more to promote and protect its interests by being a better, you know, a better communicator, let's say. Anyone feel strongly about that? And I mean, the other point, Ted, was what was the saving that the banks gave you?
We get 5 basis points up to, we can do 2 slugs of 5 basis points each. So it's you know, it helps on a $400 million debt facility, and you know, banks' funding costs are going up. You know, and just on the first point, even though I made it, I would point out that you know, you and I talked about it a bit, Nick, in our pre-meet. You know, we all operate for a variety of reasons in some far-flung jurisdictions. You know, Jesper, you know, works for a Danish UK PLC that, I don't know where you flag your vessels, I forget, but, you know, we're a Marshall Islands entity under Bahamas flag. And that all sounds great to, you know, Paulo's got a bunch of Cayman funds, if memory serves. That all sounds great, you know, for sound bites in the press. I think we all know things are quite different in reality. These are all very legitimate jurisdictions. They take their responsibilities seriously. And, you know, you keep digging from there. You look at the things that we all done for our communities, both ashore and our seafarers. And I think a lot of it has to do with shipping's general aversion to publicity. And I think a general belief that, you know, these are all traditional firms. The sanctity of the sea and the seafarer is really number one. You know, when investors ask us what keeps us up at night, you know, we say, well, barring a major catastrophe involving one of our ships, you know, there's other macro issues, but I think everyone on this panel would agree that's what you worry about, because loss of life and harm to the environment is, it would be terrible because it's all core to what we do. And I don't think people really appreciate that. I think we're all perceived to be, you know, shipping tycoons, and I think we all know the reality is far more pedestrian and, you know, far more nitty gritty than all that.
Yeah, well said, Ted. I mean, the sea remains a difficult and at times dangerous operating environment. But I think you're right.
Nicholas, just to try to respond to your questions, whether we are good at educating and telling the story. Just on a recent example, I think that shipping had a lost opportunity when we saw the Ever Given incident in the Suez Canal. It's a lot of people talked about it, but no one really just took a position and talked about the value of shipping. And we're seeing the integrated part of the total value chain, that you see consumers now all around the world seeing that they are missing goods. In the end, that means that the end of the end part of the consumers, people are not getting their computers, they are paying higher prices, and that's shipping is a very, very integrated part of that. And also, if you look at in a sustainability perspective, shipping is a part of the problem because we are emitting huge amount of CO2 that is dangerous and is causing climate change. But it's also a part of the solution because there are no other more energy efficient way, no more carbon footprint, more efficient way than transporting goods on a ship. So that's why we are also a part of the solution. So I think that story needs to be told as well, and I think that there's a new generation coming up. We see it from the attention from our stakeholders, but also within the companies, that we are better telling that story and better expressing that to everyone, and also that we are more happy to talk about it, that we are more transparent and than things than it used to be previously.
No, very well said as well, and I think it has to start at the company level, doesn't it? You know, it's tough for the industry to start communicating if individual companies barely have a functioning website saying, you know, who they are, what their values are, and who, you know, who's running the show. But just to take that Ever Given point, who do we think, you know, could have fronted up for the shipping industry? I mean, you know, should it have been the companies involved? Because I can see from the other end of the telescope, you know, some of the strategies they employed, you know, probably made sense for them at the time. You know, it wasn't for them to defend the industry. They had an operational issue to address. And I don't want to, you know, single them out, but, you know, is there something?
No, that was not my point either. That was not my point either, and I don't think I wouldn't judge on who in that setting should be talking about it, and especially those that were integrated. But us as an industry, I know here in Norway we we were asked a lot of questions from the press, and we did not talk about the specifics there because we didn't know more the details of what we have seen in the news ourselves. But we could talk about the shipping's role in the global value chain, shipping's role in the industry, and how much that means to people. And I think that this is just an example, and I think you can see that in many different aspects. I think BIMCO just made a wonderful video, really powerful video, talking about the seafarers. And the effect of the seafarers and the effect of shipping, and how that's a part of the global economy. And I think that everyone should take an opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. Anyone else want to come in on that subject, Ted?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I mean, you know, look, I think we're all governed by IMO. We all ultimately pay fees into it. Maybe they're not ideally structured to do it, but they do represent the industry's interests and generally regulate the industry. So I personally would like to have seen more from them. They got taken to task by the New York Times the other week, and frankly, I don't think we as an industry have yet managed a coherent response. You know, I wonder, Nick, I mean, you know, could class have a role? I don't know, maybe. You know, they've got a lot of data and information at their disposal, but it needs to be more you know, pan industry than any single operator, right? I mean, I think we've got enough eloquent people in this business that whether it's Poseidon principles from the banks getting to zero, IMO, whomever it may be, we do have enough industry-wide global organizations that should be, you know, speaking out for the industry, because Øistein makes a great point that it was sort of a missed opportunity, because I've had that conversation, you know, with friends and everything else. So it's a black eye, and as well, it's unfortunate, but, you know, do you appreciate how complicated it is? And do you now appreciate how important shipping is? I mean, hey guys, we're not going to be replaced by an app, you know, and there's still no way in our business to move LPG from the US Gulf to China. There just is no other way. You know, you can't put it on an airplane, can't drive it there, can't put it in a pipeline. So we're important, and we should do a better job of, you know, proving that, and you know, it can't come from just the individual companies. We do need a broader industry spokesperson.
Thanks, Ted. Paulo, do you want to come in?
Let me allow, I think,
Jesper, sorry, Paulo,
Yeah.
if Jesper goes first, yeah.
Sure.
I didn't know how to raise my hand. Anyway, so I think also the problem we have, not talking about Ever Given, because I do not know the circumstances around this, but I do think the general problem the companies like representing in this panel is that we have that the press pick up the lowest performers when the things have gone really wrong, and the practices, the value are not in place. And there we have to probably be better as an industry to lift us up and share what actually vast majority, 80 out of 100, are doing and how we're doing, and looking at as a part of the safety. What I see in amongst our company and our peers, and I'm sure all around this in this forum, is that safety actually is number one on our agenda. It's on our number one on our, it's the first thing that is being discussed at every board meeting. It's the first thing we discussed in daily operation meetings. It's the first thing to discuss on board the ships. I see a huge maturity and development during the recent years in terms of taking care of our seafarers and environment and doing the right things, doing our business with the right values, you know, so that we don't even have to think about ESG because it's just becoming a part of our value and our natural way of operating business. I just think we somehow could be probably more aggressive and coherent in how we are then positioning us towards in the public view of the public, because, and as Øistein said, we are by far the most efficient way of transporting goods, and that's just how it is, and that's how it is today, and it's how it is in 2050. There's no doubt about it.
Great, Jesper, thanks. Paulo, sorry to interrupt your flow there.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that, yeah, I do think that and I'm agreeing with my peers, of course, that I think the industry lacks a single voice. That may be partly due to the nature of it, that it's a global industry. It's still somewhat fragmented. I'm not sure what the answer to that is, whether it's the IMO, in some ways BIMCO, in others International Chamber of Shipping, but I do think that needs to be found, and perhaps it should be done on a market segment by market segment basis. Perhaps that the container industry creates a body that promotes the essential nature of container shipping. Clearly, I'm not saying that container shipping is more essential than others, but one thing that we as an investment manager that speaks regularly to very large institutional investors, one thing that we've seen recently is that a lot of our investors or potential investors who historically have thought of shipping as a commodity linked industry, one that can be volatile, and perhaps sort of at the back of their minds appreciated that shipping is essential. Over the past year or so, with the unfortunate situation in the world with the pandemic, many more parties, and I think as well a lot of the mainstream press and mainstream financial press have actually been highlighting to the world that shipping is in fact essential. For example, we speak to investors who used to think that airports were the best possible investment in the world because they're generally economically regulated. They each have their own sort of monopoly, or to some extent nearly a monopoly market. They grow year on year on year on year very regularly. And then, what does it take? Unfortunately, no one wanted COVID to happen, and we all would, of course, wish that COVID hadn't happened. But all of a sudden, shipping is essential, and airports are a luxury, or people recognize airports for actually being somewhat essential, but also a nuisance. And clearly airports didn't grow last year. They dropped 70-80% in terms of traffic. So it's through a very unfortunate situation that we've been through with COVID, with people being at home, people relying on Amazon to upgrade their screens at home, their office, work around the house, exercise bikes, these sorts of things, that people are appreciating it. I do think that this is now more broadly appreciated than before, but I don't necessarily think that the industry has actually done that for itself. We've actually had the Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, New York Times doing that for us. Whereas usually, and of course with the Ever Given, all they generally talked about were things that the shipping industry does wrong, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly not leading the agenda, I think, in that engagement. And of course, as you say, the world stops without ships, whereas we've managed without aviation or without planes. It's nice to be able to fly places, but I mean, I could probably get to New York if I had to in 4 days on a ship. It might be quite a pleasant way of getting there. Probably stay longer having done that, take the family, be like the 1930s again for wealthy people. But yeah, we've managed, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens now. And I guess one of the challenges is that unless we're really successful at decarbonizing shipping, if the rest of, if the other sectors, even hard to abate sectors, like cement or steel, start to reduce their profile rapidly, shipping's just going to look worse and worse, isn't it, in terms of its overall share of global emissions. So, I think that sense of urgency as well is that we're feeling now is timely. We've got, I think, probably 5 minutes left. Is there anything specifically you think we haven't talked about yet? Christos, anything from your perspective you want to share? One thing I wanted to mention was seafarers, and also, diversity. There still aren't as many women in shipping as perhaps I think we'd all like. Whilst, maybe some of you share my view that I don't think there's resistance to women in shipping, they're just not coming into shipping enough, is certainly my perspective. And certainly in technical roles, I think we probably have 6 or 7 female ship surveyors out of the hundreds of ship surveyors we have, but it's just tough to recruit them. Is there anything this all-male panel wants to, contribute in terms of wisdom on diversity in shipping?
Well, I think that just a perspective on that. We are going to go through probably the biggest transition since we moved from sail to engines. So we're going from sail to engines to probably back to sails again. But this transition creates enormous amount of opportunities. We need access to talent, we need access to competence, the use of technology, and we need the ability to think outside the box. And in order to do that, we cannot continue doing the same as we have done before. We need to get access to everyone. And that means that we can't, we need to stop recruiting from just 50% of the population. We need to be able to recruit from the full population. So and that includes everyone, from the culture, from a gender perspective, culture perspective. So I think that is, that's not because we want to do diversity. It's just a part of the business. It's de-risking to open up to do that. So that's why we have made set ourselves clear targets, and we're measuring ourselves against those targets. We are also reporting that to the SHE index. So we're not performing very well compared to a bank or to others, but we have set out the numbers. We are doing the metrics. We have set ambitions. We're talking about it, and as soon as we start doing that, you will see that starts affect those small decisions that we are taking every day. It is in the front of your mind, and thinking diversity. So everything that you do with how you prepare the notifications for new positions, how you do performance appraisals, how you do follow-ups, salary adjustments, all those things, how you do recruiting, how you promote your company. If you start thinking diversity and you set yourself ambitious diversity targets, you will be starting to move that big ship in the right direction.
Okay.
And just to add to what Øistein said, unfortunately on the seafarers front, we do not see many women, especially in the dry bulk industry that we operate in. There are very few, if any, female crew members. We don't get applications from female crew members, and unfortunately 100% of our crews are essentially male. But with ESG increasingly on focus, there is a requirement for ship owners and ship managers to essentially become more sophisticated. And becoming more sophisticated in the ship management means that you essentially want access to the best talent possible, especially onshore. And we have been seeing that essentially women onshore as a percentage of the total workforce has been increasing. At Starbuck, we have about 42% of our office being women. We do have some women actually in the technical department, in the new building section, as well as in the superintendent section. We do have women increasingly in our management team, and we definitely have women in our board. I believe that ESG and the higher sophistication that we are going to be required to implement as managers will inevitably lead to having more women on shore.
Good. So that's promising. Thank you, Christos. Well, I think we're at the end of our time. Jesper, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I can just compliment. We have a challenge with women in shipping. I think in North Europe, we do see female seafarers coming out, but in our company, we actually see a lot of those coming out, and then they get office jobs later on. That means they have the junior ranks on board and they get the opportunities sure in the organization, which I think is fantastic and brings a fantastic diversity in how we manage. And Danish shipping, we have launched last year a charter to attract where the owner, the member owners are getting obliged to think the diversity into our strategy. So I think, like the other says, that it's a tough one, but we can do it and we have to do it, and it's the proof is in the pudding. So it's just to get on moving, and then we get the result. I'm sure about it.
Fantastic. Well, let's do it. Let's make sure we do it. And I hope when we come back in future years, we'll be able to see that success. Well, I think it just remains for me to, thank you all very much for joining us today. And I've really enjoyed talking to you. And thank you to the audience for listening, whoever's out there. Enjoy the rest of your day, stay safe, and hope to see you all one way or another, in the real world sometime soon. So thank you, and thanks for letting me moderate the panel. Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you from my side as well. It's been an excellent panel. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day. And I think that concludes the forum. It's been a wonderful two-day event, and thank you all for making it so successful. Thank you.
Okay. Many thanks. Bye.
Thank you.